What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Laker Central podcast, where I discuss the most famous basketball franchise on the planet with the biggest, brightest, and up and coming voices in sports and culture. Before we get into today's show, make sure you tell another fan about LakerCentral.com. We are building a community, one subscriber at a time. What's up, Vinay? Welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
I'm doing good, Alex. I hope you're doing well yourself. We're inching more towards some normalcy, not normalcy, but inching more towards the NBA season coming back. And we're getting more and more info in regards to what's going on with the season, where they're staying, all that sort of stuff, which we'll cover. But I'm doing good. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I took today off. I took tomorrow off, which if you're watching this now, tomorrow is Juneteenth. So I took the last couple of days off to celebrate that. Me and my wife, and we were just hanging out, man.
Yeah. So since you mentioned Juneteenth, I know the Kings and a few other teams have started, and the Hawks, I think, were the first team that did it. But looks like they've been giving paid holidays to all their employees for some of these franchises for Juneteenth. So, I know of Juneteenth. I know, the gist of the significance of what it is, but I probably don't know as much as I probably should know about it. So I was wondering if we could take this opportunity before we start talking about some more basketball related matters to just hear from you as to the importance of Juneteenth and sort of what it means to the Black community, that date is commemorated or celebrated or advocated for.
Yeah, man. So I'll try to keep be as basic as possible. All right. So everybody in America celebrates July 4th, Independence Day, which originally took place in 1776. But unless you've been under the rock the last 500 years, July 4th didn't apply to Black people. And so while the country celebrates Independence Day, my ancestors were still enslaved when that took place. So you fast forward 90 years or so, and Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation, which essentially ends slavery in the United States. It was effective January 1st, 1863.
Mm-hmm.
But just because a president signed something doesn't mean that it's going to be enforced around the country. And so Juneteenth is essentially the celebration of those enslaved people that were down in Texas finally getting the news of the Emancipation Proclamation and Union soldiers finally getting down there and enforcing it. And so, to be clear, we celebrate Independence Day as a country July 4th, which again took place in 1776. Africans or enslaved Black people did not receive their freedom until January 1st, 1863. And then it actually didn't reach the entire country, Texas specifically, until 1865. And so we celebrate that June 19th, 1865 as Juneteenth. More and more Black people are recognizing it. More of the country is recognizing it. A bunch of major companies like Truist Bank, which is SunTrust and BB&T, that they've given the day off to a number of folks, and more companies are paying attention to it. More people are celebrating it. So it's when we celebrate independence as Black people.
Awesome. I think you said it pretty well, and I appreciate you sharing that. So hopefully, for anybody who's part of the live stream that doesn't know the significance of it, even for me myself, just reinforcing kind of the importance of it. Understands the importance of that date. I know the president has a rally that he's set up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a very important location to the community as well, in terms of historical, the history behind that location. So, obviously he's doing the narcissist stuff that he's always going to do and saying that he's making it more popular. But anyways, this is not a political podcast, so we won't really get on that.
He canceled the rally.
He did?
Yeah. For those that don't know, Trump was going to hold a rally down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tulsa, Oklahoma is the site of one of the bloodiest massacres of Black people in the United States history. It was a very affluent Black town at the time, and white people got upset that they were Blacks with money and burned the town to the ground, killing a number of Black people. So Trump was going to hold a rally there, and somebody told him, yeah, it's probably a bad idea. And he opted otherwise. But yeah, So,
sorry, big props to anybody who registered for that rally for the sake of just not showing up and or to show up and protest. Most of the folks know or may already know, but I'm in Georgia right now, and my brother-in-law and my in-laws are all out here in Georgia, and they told me that like amongst like the Indian community, like my community and stuff like that, they were all trying to buy tickets and register online so they could sell it out. But then they were never planning on showing up. So either he would have shown up to a rally with nobody there, or would have showed up to a rally where everybody was protesting against him. And I wouldn't be surprised if his folks caught some wind of that. And obviously optics are important to him and the administration. So that's a win. Getting him to cancel that is a big win for that day, especially.
It is, man. So look, we were just talking offline. NBA Twitter's been kind of wild, and some of it seems to be fueled by the media, right? Like,
yep,
we've got Kyrie Irving, Avery Bradley, Dwight Howard, and a number of other NBA players saying, if we are going to resume basketball, there are some additional things that we want to see take place from the NBA. Since they've done that, people have made fun of Kyrie. Kendrick, Perkins, and Stephen A. Smith have went on the warpath, so to speak, either on social media and or on their relative TV shows. And they are criticizing these guys for taking a stand, basically. I mean, that's what they are doing. They're criticizing them for taking a stand. And it's wild. I released an article this morning on LakersCentral.com specifically talking about black media members attacking black athletes. And I outlined why I think that is going on, but I don't see what the deal is with Kendrick and Stephen A. or anybody else that's critical of Kyrie, Avery, Dwight, whoever is involved in this. It seems like they're attacking them, and their attacks are baseless. And so now it's went from the NBA. They agreed to resume the season. Adam Silver said, even though we've agreed, the NBA and the NBPA, there are still details being worked out. Those details are some of what the players right now are talking about. And so it seems like basically the NBA released a memo. The season is going to resume July 30th. People didn't read the fine print, and that they still had a lot of stuff to work out. Yes. And now people are shitting a brick because the players are saying, wait a minute, this is what we want out of this if we're going to go forward.
Yeah, and I figure probably one of the things that's making this a little bit more irritating for the folks who really, really want the season to be canceled for whatever motivation is because Florida's had a spike in infections or at least positive tests as it relates to the coronavirus. And obviously that's where Florida is, in Orlando is where the league is going to be played. So to start back at your point, since the NBA has worked its way back, they initially mentioned that they were going to bring the league back. There's some speculative dates that they had pushed out that were in negotiations. I think a few folks on Twitter have kind of made it pretty clear, like every section of this return to play is like up for conversation until it actually gets finalized and voted on. I think we as a Twitter audience and as fans, we kind of look at these things like it's me and you jumping on a podcast. Like, hey, Alex, you got time? Vinay, you got time? All right, let's just jump on and do it. But fans need to remember this is a business, and this is not something where you could just hang out with your buddies and figure it out. Right. It is something that has contractual obligations to it. There's legitimate safety concerns. I know that there was a report out there that players who are like restricted free agents, like Jason Tatum, or not restricted free agents, but like guys who are going to be restricted free agents.
Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell, those guys, they're concerned about the insurance in case they get hurt during this process or they get coronavirus or something like that, insurance policies for themselves. So there are many sections of this return to play agreement that both the league and the Players Association are working out. But even within those sections, there are many layers to those sections as well. And I think, like you mentioned, the most prominent conversation right now has been in regards to not so much the return to play, because that's pretty much everybody's more or less voted that they want it to go back. The main impasse right now seems, and I think Dame actually just recently mentioned it, they know there is a risk to them going back.
Mm-hmm.
But what folks need to also accept is the risk is no different than us going back to work. If I return to my office, I'm taking the same risk that, and I don't, and my office is telling me, hey, we've got this quarantined environment. There's all this protocol that you have to follow and everybody else has to follow. All of that's all fine and dandy, but there's still a risk that I take for myself and, on behalf of my family and stuff like that. So with that being the case, it's the same thing for NBA players. There's a risk for them too, as well. And so with that being the case, I understand that there's some players that don't want to play even with that risk. So that makes sense. But you can see that some of the superstar players are also saying in their own right, like, it's a risk. Dame said himself, it's a risk that I'm willing to take because A, he wants to earn his money. And B, maybe he just wants to play. There are some folks that just want to play, right? Whether you make a lot of money or you don't make a lot of money. So that's fine. But there's also this layer of, specifically in Kyrie's situation and the folks that he represents, Dwight, Avery Bradley, where they don't want to do just to return to play, right? They want to do, if they're going to return to play, they want to use this moment as maximum leverage. And the goal of that maximum leverage is to force the owners to invest in the communities. One thing I think that we've talked about a lot on this podcast is that anything that an athlete can do for his community is great. Donating backpacks, laptops, rebuilding schools, rebuilding, recreational, parks and stuff like that. That's all wonderful stuff. But at the same time, this money and this equity, financial equity, is coming out of the athlete himself. It's coming out of his own pockets. And while philanthropy is not something that should ever be compared, we're talking about millionaires giving money out of their pockets compared to billionaires who can give money out of those pockets. And I'm a big advocate that everybody should try and give money if they can't protest and stuff like that as it relates to Black Lives Matter movement. But I also agree with what the players are saying, where we can use this moment to force these billionaires to invest in our company, invest in our communities, right? The one example I'll give you is, Steve Ballmer's been doing a lot of stuff in regards to the LA, because I'm from LA and we're Laker fans, so we get to hear it from all the ESPN LA folks that are on Ballmer's payroll. But what we get to do is we get to see that Ballmer's rebuilding backboards and he's doing all these programs for kids and all that sort of stuff. That's wonderful. That's great. Kawhi went out and gave backpacks to kids in Moreno Valley and all that sort of stuff. That's all great. But at the same time, all of that stuff has Clippers branding on it. So while the philanthropy is great, are you doing it because you're genuinely invested in the communities, or are you doing it because you're trying to raise the profile of your team? And that's the part that I think Kyrie and Avery Bradley and Dwight Howard, they're trying to change that. They don't want teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, and all these other teams. They don't want them to just invest in the community as a purpose of raising the profile of your team, right? The point of investing in Inglewood is not so that you can then say the Clippers helped out Inglewood, so now Inglewood residents should be fans of the Clippers. That's not the point. The point of investing in these communities is to raise the level of, reduce the level of inequality that there is between one community versus another, or one neighborhood versus another. And I think that's the message that Kyrie and Avery Bradley and all these guys are trying to put together.
But let me add this. So people are clear. During the pandemic, U.S. billionaires have added $408 billion to their fortunes. Let me say that one more time. During the pandemic, where there are 40 million Americans unemployed, billionaires, United States billionaires, have added $408 billion to their fortunes. Steve Ballmer, that you just mentioned, has added $4 billion in like 3 months to his net worth, which I think now is like $68 billion. The players are telling the billionaires who aren't losing money, their franchises may be losing money, but their other companies are clearly making money. They're saying to them, the league is 80% Black. We now need you to invest in the community that we make as Black players that we come from. And then the NBA as a brand wouldn't be what it is without us. It would not be.
You're right.
So we're going to put our lives on the line. We're going to put our families at risk. You need to do more than just pay our salaries. If we're going to be quarantined and locked down and have restrictions, you need to do more, specifically when there are Black people being killed in the streets at the hands of police officers. You all need to help us fight that if you're going to make money off of us.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And the way that I know another conversation that's been happening on Twitter a lot is, are using social platforms and stuff like that effective, right? Like how much work can you actually get done? And I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. We talked about how noisy it is to promote ideas on Twitter and Instagram and all those different places because people twist that information for their own agendas and their own purpose. But one of the things that I think folks need to really try to one thing that I approach, this is my approach when I come to thinking about why these negotiations are good. Every time somebody talks about police brutality, there's always that huge swath of people that come through and say, well, 75% of America is like white and like 13% is black. It's, the volume and the proportions and the ratios, the percentages, all that sort of stuff. Okay, that's fine. So if we turn around and we look at the black community and we look at what sort of industry verticals that they participate in and which industry verticals they dominate in. We talked about it on the last podcast when it comes to music and sports. The black community contributes like you said, 75 to 80% of that population is black folks. You're not getting tons of populations. You're not getting like tons of black folks that are in different industries. You yourself are in banking. There may not be as many people in banking percentage wise as there may be in your position, as there may be in basketball or football or any of those other sports. So when you don't have representation in all these other industry verticals, you can't apply pressure from all those other industry verticals to the overall cause. So if you only have a small percentage of verticals that you can be part of, and by verticals, I just mean, for anybody, if this is confusing, just any like kind of work industry is what I mean by industry verticals. If you're highly concentrated in certain industry verticals, you have to use those platforms because if you decide to just cancel it and just walk away, that is a huge platform that you miss out on. And that's the part that bothers me the most, that folks are advocating for a canceled season. If you're doing it on the merits of, hey, this pandemic is really dangerous, somebody could die from it, 100% understand. I agree. I have no disagreement with that. Safety is important. Health is important. As long as you can live with the financial consequences, go for it. It's no different than me going back to work or working from home. But to say that the platform doesn't matter, I think is sort of, I don't want to say it's like a slap in the face, but it's sort of slap in the face of the equity that you've built up in that industry vertical. Like black folks have had to fight through segregation to get into these sports. And they got to a point where they completely dominate these sports too. And it's same for like the music industry and journalism. There's a lot of folks making a lot of noise about the importance of having black journalists cover black athletes so that because they're attached to the experience, the black experience of growing up and getting there and stuff like that. And it just, for me, it just doesn't make any sense it's like cutting your nose, just for a moral victory. And you don't have there's not that many avenues, that people can't avoid. People can't avoid sports. People want their sports. So there's a big chunk of America that wants their sports. So if you know that they let's just say it's like a drug addict. Let's say they're addicted to sports. They need sports bad. Why would you why would you not send your message through that medium? And so that's my stance on that. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are, but the title of this podcast is, how black media is now attacking black athletes, and how it's become so pronounced with this thing that's happening between Kendrick Perkins and Kyrie, and also what's happening with Stephen A. Smith. I feel like it's an opportunity for those guys to really exact change within their own platforms. I think it's possible for Stephen A. Smith to turn around and go and talk to his producers and say, look, I can't take this angle. Like Max Kellerman shouldn't be the one turning around abdicating, against the party line. And so unless that's by design and he's doing it knowingly, which I would hope he's not doing it knowingly, like, how are you really helping the situation? I understand advocating for the season to restart. If that's that argument, I get that part. But the argument of, going towards character assassination and motive assassination and stuff like that, for the sake of making your argument, that doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever.
No, it's ridiculous. And I think you mentioned this about sports. Sports is like a drug to Americans. And so the players are recognizing that people want sports back. A lot of general fans don't care the risk that the players are putting themselves in. They just want their sports back. And so what the players have realized is, wait a minute, we do want to play, but this is our opportunity to force everyone involved to give us what we want to better our communities. And I think the players, I believe they released a statement that referenced the intellectual property, essentially of Black culture, which the exporting of Black culture is probably America's greatest export. There is nothing, not oil, not technology. Black culture fuels everything. And these players are recognizing, wait a minute, you guys are making money on our backs, and not just sports. But I'm going to give you a really big example that I see a lot of. So influencers in recent years have become celebrities in their own right. Like people that essentially, they're not singing, they're not dancing, they're not acting. They're just on Instagram because they look a certain way, right?
Right. When
you look at a number of the white women who are on Instagram, they have tanner skin now, bigger lips, bigger asses. Like they're wearing braids, cornrows. That is the intellectual property of Black people. Like that is literally it. And they get millions of followers for looking like a minority. And that should say a whole lot about this country. Kim Kardashian, who herself is a minority, she benefits from towing the line of not really being a minority, but kind of capitalizing on Black culture. She has no clue really what Black culture is because she's never lived like a Black person anyway. Her father had money. She's got tons of money. Her children are half Black, but they benefit on this on Black culture. And so it is by far the number one export. When you get to Black people who have platforms like Stephen A. Smith, as an example, he's probably the most well-known sports personality out there. He's
easily
got to be the biggest person on TV regarding sports, right?
Yep.
And Stephen A. Smith, when I was writing my article this morning and I was looking for an interesting angle and trying to figure out why would this dude go on there and say the things that he says. And Stephen A. Smith famously, he's went at Colin Kaepernick for kneeling. He's called him out. He said that Cap just wanted publicity when he did his workout. He says these things that are counterproductive to what these Black athletes are trying to achieve. And when I was watching the exchange, like the stuff that he's saying on First Take about Kyrie, I'm like, all right, let me step back. Let me take my emotion out of it as a Black man and just step back. I said, okay, Disney and ESPN is losing money because there aren't any sports. Disney can't put out its Marvel movies. ESPN doesn't have sports. They are huge partners of the NBA. And so Disney went and asked, ESPN to have 100 of their highest paid personalities take pay cuts. Stephen A. Smith is their highest paid on-air personality, $8 to $10 million a year, which is crazy. So I'm gonna get back to that number in a second. But at $8 to $10 million in a year, Disney says we want these guys to take 15% pay cuts. We're not going to make them because contractually we can't, but we would like for them to do so.
Yeah.
Stephen A. Smith agrees. That costs him roughly $1.2 million annually if he takes that pay cut.
Right.
He gains financially if the NBA returns. Like he clearly gains if the NBA returns. And so one of the reasons that I think that he is essentially shitting on Kyrie is because if Kyrie can convince, or Avery Bradley or anyone else that's involved can convince enough players not to return, that hurts Stephen A. Smith financially. Despite the fact that whatever good that they can enforce for the Black community would help Stephen A. long term and help his family and help other people in his family that might not have his financial resources, he's throwing that stuff out the window and just saying, no, these guys need to play. Same with Kendrick Perkins. They're coming from their own place of privilege because they have money and they feel like these guys should be playing. The funny part is about all of this, they would not have platforms without these same Black athletes.
Right.
Like if these guys walked away, no one's paying Stephen A. $8 to $10 million to talk about what? Baseball? I don't think so.
ESPN this entire time during this pandemic has just been rehashing the same content over and over. They've had no conversations whatsoever about anything else. They're not even talking about the stuff that's happening in the protests. I mean, some folks will go on and mention it here and there, and nobody's expecting ESPN to become a political, a political news platform or something like that. But like clearly they need live sports. I keep saying it over and over again. Like when I see these segments and stuff like that, and I'm just like, dude, this network is completely cooked without live sports. Like without live sports whatsoever, and especially the NBA. as much as, I know the NFL, completely, smashes the NBA when it comes to ratings and stuff like that. A lot of America loves football. I would say football is like, it is American culture to some degree, synonymous with American culture. So I get that. But football isn't as divisive outside of maybe things like what Kaepernick did. It isn't as divisive as the NBA is.
Oh, I can tell you why that is.
So, last podcast we mentioned that the NBA audience is not the NFL audience. And one of the things is with the transparency that the NBA gives us is that when it comes to NBA athletes, because the NBA there's player empowerment. There's that whole more than athlete thing that LeBron advocates for and players advocate for. The NBA basically puts their athletes to the front. But when that happens, it's easier for people to attack those players. They'll never attack the organizational franchises. They'll always attack the players. So it's always LeBron's fault that this happened, or it's Kyrie's fault, or Durant's fault, or Steph's fault, Harden's fault, whoever, right? The onus is always on that one guy or that star player. The NFL also does promote their star players, but it's very selective with what star players it does. And for the most part, it's usually always positive. They usually have the guys that they want to pick on to kind of the Baker Mayfields and stuff like that when he has like a bad game or average game, he's not that great, that kind of stuff. But because of the way those audiences think, everybody joins that party. Everybody has that mindset. Everybody goes, including guys like Perkins and Stephen A. Smith, they all go along that party line where instead of attacking the thought process, right? Instead of saying, what is Kyrie trying to say? What is Kyrie trying to do? You attack the player. You attack the credibility of the player, the characterization of the player. What is his motive? What is his background? Where does he come from? Who are his friends? NBA Twitter is probably the only Twitter that I've seen where people will go and scroll through people's likes just to see if there's some nonsense that, that the person accidentally liked or somebody retweeted. You see people pulling posts from like 10 years ago when like the athlete was like a 12-year-old or something like that for the young generation of guys. And it's just, we all, and it's not like as if I don't bring that kind of stuff up either myself. I'm not any better, but that's the culture that's now gotten cultivated. And the problem that's happening here is these sports networks are just, that's their angle all the time. Like it's not the merits or the principle of what these folks are arguing, what Kyrie and Bradley and Dwight are arguing for. It's just their character. And that's a problem.
I said this in the article, man. White America largely views black athletes as selfish, right? Like you're lucky to make millions of dollars to play a child's game, right? Like as if you don't put your body on the line, as if your family didn't struggle to help get you to where you're at. Like you just woke up and you had a 44-inch vert and you just went into the NBA. Like that's not how it works.
But I always have this personal philosophy where when somebody uses really stupid logic, but is like convinced, like very adamant that they're going to use that stupid logic to make their argument, I go with it just to show them how stupid, how absurd it is. So if white America looked at me and said, well, you're so lucky to be able to play this sport and do this thing, my response to them would be like, yeah, you're right. I'm so lucky to do this. I have to say what I have to say because I don't know when I'll have this chance ever again. So it's like, if people tell you that you're selfish and you're all this stuff, sometimes I think to myself, it's like, yeah, I am selfish because I don't know if I would have this opportunity. I don't know if I would have this platform ever again. Tomorrow, something could happen to Kyrie. Kyrie could be the guy who's getting pulled over by a cop and something could happen to him. And if something like that happens, then what are we arguing, right? Like we just had years ago the example of what happened to Kaepernick. It was peaceful protest on a national stage and an entire organization, the NFL, got him out of there. And some folks spoke up for him. A lot of folks spoke against him. And a lot of folks twisted his message. And that's how quickly things can change,
I always say, like, me and my wife have been fortunate enough to have some of the things that we have. Mm-hmm. And I say that we're blessed. I say that we're fortunate. I don't call it luck because maybe we buck the curve of what people think black people are, right? And it's the same thing for these athletes. They're not lucky. They worked hard. You want to know what luck is? Being born white, because you didn't do anything to be given that. You literally, like, you're just born and you are born with privilege. These guys, the privilege that comes with being an athlete, like they had to work to get that. And their careers are short at that. And then if they fail, you're laughing at them all along the way. So I feel like with Kendrick Perkins said, because the players have said we think sports might be a distraction. So Kendrick Perkins came around and then said, well, look what we've talked about these last few days. Kyrie has made himself a distraction. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I hope you realize Kyrie doesn't tell ESPN what to run.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
You guys get to dictate what you're covering. And then when I looked at Kendrick's last 5 tweets, 3 of them were about Kyrie. So no one's making you tweet about him. Like you could spend a few segments talking about what's going on with the players, but then you could also spend time talking about what's going on with the pandemic and these protests. You're choosing to talk about him, and then you want to blame him. They're playing on these narratives that are simply wrong. And I'm a big believer. I've said this on Off the Record on my other podcast. I'm a big believer in you better look in the mirror, because I'm 5'7", 140, and I'm fair skinned. I don't look like what they think black people look like. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't look like the caricatures that they paint of us. Right. But some of the guys criticizing, you guys look like the caricatures. Right. Like look in the mirror at like you're criticizing your own on behalf of somebody that really criticizes you. This is crazy. And so we're in this place where there's no sports. We all want our sports. I started a damn website in the midst of a pandemic without the NBA. I spent thousands of dollars to do that. But beyond all, like I stand to benefit financially if this thing works. But beyond that, I'm black first, and I support the choice of each player. So Kendrick Perkins said, it's time to get back to work. These guys have had 3 months of cuddling, playing Monopoly, and playing Uno. Listen, man, come on. Whether it's a pandemic, because of the pandemic, because of protest, or because these guys want to cuddle, they have the right to choose what is best for them. Like all the rest of us have the right to choose what's best for us. And I support their choice. It's kind of like with the discussion of, are you pro-choice or not for women? Right. Yeah, she has the right to make a decision for her. I don't get the right to tell her what that she can or she should make that decision for. Like I support the choice, and we've gotten to this place where there's no sports, there's not a lot to talk about. But you know what gets a lot of clicks? Criticizing Kyrie or Avery Bradley, saying they don't have a plan when they do have a plan, when they stated what their plan was, and. The play when that private Nets group chat where players were leaking Kyrie, they said Kyrie wanted to start his own league, but then they said that was a lie. The players that are leaking these text messages to the media, man, that's wrong. Like, I don't know. What do you stand to gain by that?
Yeah, I think I read the other day that they said that even the conference call was not, and I understand that it goes both ways. You know, like some players actually. Let me phrase this so it doesn't sound like a false equivalence. I was told, or I read, that the conference call that originally happened with like those 80 players or something like that, it wasn't an NBPA sanctioned conference call. So I understand that there's some apprehension in regards to Kyrie's motives as to why he's doing that. But at the same time, a lot of the general messaging that's come, especially from Dwight, because Dwight's been pretty vocal about this subject, is that there are players in the league or as part of this return plan of those eligible players that have concerns that they're afraid to voice for whatever reason. Now, I don't think the NBA is the NFL. I don't think if any players came out and said something, the league would like blackball them from the league. I don't think that's it. I don't think any teammates would blackball them from the league because, to be honest, everything's moving forward. Like they've already voted on all this stuff. So like all this stuff that's happening on the side or the conversation that's happening on the side, that's happening like literally on the side. It's not something that is affecting anything moving forward. It's something that's happening on the side that they need to iron out. So I understand that part. The part that's very difficult for me is you and I just sat here we're going on about 34 minutes. And both of us pretty much said the same thing. We said, we understand if you don't want to play and we understand if you want to play. But we also understand the importance of using your platform to a platform a limited platform, a very small opportunity that you may have, but a very impacting opportunity. I think Matt Barnes has said that it's a very impactful situation that they could do with the negotiations that are going on right now. It's important that they make use of that. You can say that. I don't understand why Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A. Smith don't just go up there and say, I understand Kyrie. I understand the guys and I understand the guys that want to play. here's a happy medium.
Right.
I understand both sides. And I know that in sports, we don't like middle ground and we don't like to discuss the gray area. But how much more unified would a message be if Kyrie, Dwight, and Avery Bradley are saying, we want the NBA to invest in our communities? And then you spent an entire segment talking about maybe these are different ways that the NBA communities could be invested. These communities can be invested in by the NBA. Take a look at a landmark move that these players in the NBA are doing by forcing billionaires to invest into their communities, doing out so that they're not spending money out of their own pockets. Why not talk about the infrastructure of how this league is predominantly black and all the black athletes, or all the athletes in general, have to devote money out of their pockets to improve their own communities. LeBron built a school in his community, and Steph is doing stuff for his own communities, but these are millionaires. These are people who don't have as much as the people who they work for. Steph shouldn't have to do that. He shouldn't have to fund Oakland a homeless food program, like food for the homeless programs in Oakland. The Warriors should do that. They should go to Steph and say, hey, how do we help you? How do we help this community that you want to be a part of?
Joe Lacob has a lot more money than Steph Curry.
Right. And that's the part that is very difficult. Like I understand like doing philanthropy and all that sort of stuff, like Ballmer did and all that sort of stuff. And, the philanthropy that all these other guys doing, but I'm also not dumb. I also saw a video of the Rockets owner, Tillman Fertitta, sitting on a board in front of the president, asking for an exception so he could get a small business loan or use the payroll protection program or whatever, like asking for an exception so he could use that. So it's like, all right, man, like, what are we doing here? Like, if I don't own a small business, so I don't get, I may not get that same program that's being afforded to small business. I understand the reason why that program exists and all that sort of stuff. But you have billionaires asking for handouts. And here are millionaires giving money out of their own pocket to support these programs. And this is outside of the entire landscape of what's going on in America. There are people still protesting. There are people who still need to be bailed out. And
that's part of the problem, man.
And
there was the PPP loan program, which I worked on a bit at my job. Federally, there's no oversight, which is why so many multi-billion-dollar companies were able to get funding when they should not have been able to get funding. And Tim Fertitta, to your point, is someone that it would try to get funding. And when you see when you see billionaires making money during a terrible time in American history, and everybody else is struggling, but then the billionaires are still asking for more money, like that's an issue. When I'm sure the players recognize Ballmer building that arena in Inglewood, which gentrifies Inglewood, which is a predominantly black community. Yep. He was able to pay cash for the Clippers, right? Like I want people to understand,
for the Forum, he bought the Forum cash for $500 million. Yeah.
Like Tim Fertitta of the Rockets had to finance part of his lending and get money from Leslie Alexander, the previous owner, to buy the Rockets. Ballmer, on the other hand, paid straight cash, homie, for the Clippers, for the Inglewood Arena, for the Lakers Old Arena. Yep, for the Great Western Forum. And then he's building another one. Like, the players are saying, wait a minute, you guys have cash to blow. Yeah. Like, we do want to give to our own communities, but you guys extract so much from our communities, you now need to foot more of that bill. Yeah. You guys need to pay that money up. And they should.
Yeah, and I understand. I get that. If the music industry had to shut down and the sports industry had to shut down, there are a lot of folks in media that would also be out of jobs. Just like you mentioned, like your own situation as well. That if there's no Lakers to cover, then your site doesn't really have as much content to put out. Right. And I understand that Kendrick Perkins' job security. I think he just recently got like a full-time gig with ESPN. I want to say it's been less than 12 months. Stephen A. Smith, he's got tons of equity, so that's not really a problem for him. So I understand that their industry suffers as well. They're probably also advocating outside of the athletes. They're probably also advocating for their own coworkers too at ESPN and stuff like that, the lower level folks. I 100% understand that. I want them to advocate for their own folks. I want them to do that. But at the same time, the way you're going about doing it, right? The way you're pushing the message out about Kyrie and about all the other folks that are there, that's the part that doesn't make any sense. What is the purpose of attacking somebody's character when you can just say, I understand what you're trying to do. I don't agree with the method, right? And that's one of the things that I think I tweeted about earlier, that being critical of methodology, right, is no different than pitting two black athletes together and saying this guy's a better mid-range shooter and this one isn't, so this guy's trash and this one isn't, right? Like this thing, and I've talked to you about it off the record or whatever. Like, I don't understand why the community always wants to pit one person against the other. Why is it that one person has to always grandstand like it's like, it's like Avengers Endgame or something like that, and one's Captain America and one's Thanos? Like, I don't understand why that has to happen every single time. This should be a no-brainer for sports media. Everybody should be saying, I'm glad the NBA is coming back. I'm happy that the players, if you want sports back, I'm happy that the players are willing to play. I respect them for that. I understand that they're taking risks. And then the last thing should be, if they want to gain more leverage for themselves and get the teams, these billionaires, to invest in their communities, they should do that. That's within their right. It's a whole union versus a whole organization, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how it should work. That's America. That's how it works in America. And that's it. Like, then talk about other stuff. There's so much other content that you can cover. But I don't understand why it's always this guy's the villain. And I mean, I understand why. It's because that gets more clicks, right? The more off the ledge that Kendrick Perkins goes and Stephen A. Smith, the more drastic, more extreme of a position they take, that does that. But we're now getting into territory where it's getting really personal, right? Like you're getting to a point where you're making jokes like, all right, you had time to play Monopoly and enjoy yourself and stuff like that. It's time to get back. No, that's not how it works. None of it. That's not how any of this works. Mm-hmm. And that is equity that the Black community has built up for itself. Black athletes have built up for themselves in these respective sports. And so, look, man, I know that people really want their sports back, and I see a lot of folks on Twitter doing some really fake virtue signaling and saying, "Oh, people just want their hoops back. Laker fans just want their hoops back. They don't really care about the players, or they don't care about the pandemic, or Black Lives Matter." Like, trust me, there are many, many fans in all different fan bases that are affected and care about this situation. And the folks on Twitter that are trying to be holier than thou, I really hope I don't see them tweet about the NBA. Like, if the season comes back, I don't want to see any of those folks be live tweeting any Laker games. I don't want to see them live tweeting, this guy's better than the other guy. You shouldn't be on Twitter. You should be off NBA Twitter if the league comes back, if you feel that strongly about it. And you definitely shouldn't be tweeting about the NFL or the MLB if you're tweeting, if that's going to be your stance. And I bet you most of those folks will still be here on the app arguing with us during the season when it comes back, because that's how Twitter works, right? We like to take the holier than thou position and then just step away, and then just act like we never said it when it happened. But the other thing is also this. I have not heard about any solidarity between NBA players, NFL players, and MLB players. So if the NBA cancels its season, 30 days later, the NFL is coming back. And whenever the MLB comes back, it'll come back. And they may just continue the status quo. Maybe for the NFL players, the next step, what it sounds like it's going to be, is players are going to kneel during the national anthem. And if they kneel, I'm sure that'll cause a big hubbub. But football is going to continue as usual. Like, people are going to know that these players are going to kneel in advance. So that's my thing. Like, there is probably not going to be solidarity. Like, the NFL isn't going to cancel its season. Those players aren't going to cancel the season. NFL players have an even shorter livelihood as it relates to their contracts as well. And so, it's just not going to happen the way that folks think it is. And the people that want to have the people who want to be, somebody summed it up very easily on Twitter. I forgot who the person was. So I apologize if you're watching this, but credit goes to you. If basketball is enough to distract you from the protests and racism, then you were never interested in protests and racism to begin with. That's it.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. So if you think it's going to be a distraction to the majority of America by having basketball on, chances are that majority didn't care to begin with. And basically cutting out your own legs to make that statement to people who don't care isn't going to be helpful. So we either have to have solidarity between all the leagues, or if you're going to play, you have to make the experience. This is the angle that I've been running on. You have to make the experience as not uncomfortable, but it has to disrupt from your normal viewing experience. You can't be able to watch somebody throw a football or, do a touchdown celebration or dribble a ball up and down the court without knowing that what they're doing it for, what they're representing. And I think that is the crux of the conversation that's going on and the stance that Kyrie and all these guys are taking. They want to make sure that if they are going to step foot on the hardwood, that you cannot escape what is going on in America today. And I hope they're successful. I hope they figure out something. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to say it wasn't enough, or it's not good enough, or they disagree with the methodology to begin with. But you have to do something. You can't just, this is the platform you have. You're not in that many industries. You have to make use of it in some form. And like we said before, sports is like a drug addiction for many people. We have to use that message. The players have to use that message, in my opinion, to push the movement forward.
The players, they're asking for a number of things, but the three specific things is, one, they want to see better hiring practices for Black coaches and Black general managers. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Troy Weaver, who just got the job in Detroit. Mm-hmm. I'm a strong advocate for that dude. He was there when Durant and Russell and Harden were there. I wanted the Lakers to interview him before Rob was even a thing. So they want more Blacks in leadership positions. What they also want is they want the NBA to partner with more Black-owned companies and vendors. Mm-hmm. That's another way. And then they also want the league and the owners to start investing in the nonprofits and organizations that specifically help Black communities.
Yep.
Those are three huge things. And if they can accomplish those, hey, that's I'm happy about that. And there's still more work to be done. None of this is going away tomorrow. There's so much work to still be done. But if they're going to put their lives on the line, then they need to go and then they need to get what they're asking for. And I'm pretty sure the owners in the league will acquiesce to what they're asking for. They're going to. And so it's crazy because it's an ever evolving story. I feel like today there haven't been as many leaks or rumors. The last couple of days ago, it was just 24 hours of just stuff coming out from all the different outlets. But I'm happy these guys are standing up for what will help them, their families, and their communities. And so let's close on that, man. And we'll definitely get back on or record something else if some big news comes. But
for sure,
tell everybody, Vinay, how they can find all your stuff in your platform, man.
Yeah, I'm only on Twitter. You can find, if I'm putting it correctly, you can see the handle right there. It's just vkillum. And then I have a newsletter that I've been really slow about getting around to because I've just been very, very busy during this entire time. And so you can find that newsletter in my bio. But yeah, those are pretty much the only just find me on Twitter. That's pretty much where everybody kind of has conversations with me and stuff like that. And so, as always, I hope the audience is doing well. Everybody who's watching or ends up watching these podcasts or listening to the podcast audio later, I hope everybody's doing well. I know that the coronavirus cases are now surging in a lot of states. I don't know if that's going to be the second wave or if there's going to be an even bigger wave coming, but I hope everybody's being safe and following protocols. I hope everybody that is protesting is also safe and that is out in the streets. For the folks that are unable to protest, there are a lot of resources online where you can donate. I hope that folks are able to donate if they can, whether it be time or money with what's going on. And, we're still stuck in the house right now, and it's getting hot here in Georgia. It's very, very hot right now. And we get rain and the humidity is like crazy. So when it gets hot, people want to go outside. And I know that right now everybody's being told to be safe and stay indoors. So I hope everybody's doing good. And like always, I appreciate everybody who watches us and, continue to do so. And we'll be back. I'm sure we'll get some more news. The Lakers got the best hotel though. So I'm glad that they did the hotel option. That's the other thing I'll say. Hopefully they don't got to pay for Wi-Fi or anything like that when they're at that hotel. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to everybody. One that is subscribing to the podcast, subscribing to the website, following me across social media. I've gotten a lot of messages about me using my platform this way, about me talking about issues that are obviously sports related, but also have a larger place in American culture, American society. So thank you guys for those kind words. I had someone say to me, I need a larger platform today. And I am trying. I've come a long way with this Lakers Central podcast. I don't have billions behind me doing this. It takes a lot.
We're regular guys, everybody who's watching this, like we're regular folks that are just trying to make, trying to be passionate about the Lakers and be passionate about the things that go on in the world today. So we're just regular. Somebody accused me of being a journalist the other day. They're like, oh, because I was like, oh, Shams is washing Woj with all this information, and somebody's just like, aren't you a journalist? He's dunking on you too. And I was just like, oh, I don't know if people realize it's just a regular guy that's just writes a lot or talks a lot when it comes to certain things. But yeah, as always, man, I appreciate all the folks that watch and contribute, and just add to the better NBA Twitter culture, basketball Twitter culture that we're trying to improve on Twitter.
I agree. Well, make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast, and you can follow me on Twitter, on all social media at Lakers Central 365. So we'll close out on that, folks. Until next time, we're out.